Dr. Lola has a doctor's degree in organizational psychology, a master's degree in clinical psychology, and also a bachelor's degree as well. She's written many articles on this topic. It is her passion. Without further ado, as they say, Dr. Lola Gershfeld, you have the stage, my dear. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Karen. When I developed the EmC process, I kind of looked at all the research and looked at all the literature, and it was clear to me that the companies were kind of moving away from behaviorism and cognition, and I thought to myself, great, now it's emotions' turn. Nope, not really. What happened was companies kind of leaped over emotion and into the brain, and now everybody's in love with the brain. So I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for joining us. So what I hope today is that you will see that for us as human beings in our nervous system, in our workplace, the most powerful thing that is happening is emotion. And we need to make friends with it and use it for change. So as a disclosure, as a quick disclosure, I'm very excited to share that the course of Mastering Emotional Connection and Train the Train certification is now approved for recertification from ICF. And for years, companies have been talking about emotional intelligence, but it really hasn't helped too much. But what we have to be able to say is, what is emotional intelligence? How do we get there? And what are the blocks that are in my way to be emotionally intelligent? So I hope that this process brings emotion more into people's awareness. It brings emotion more front and center. So just a quick poll. What approach have you used? Do you use behavioral approach, cognitive approach, and see both A and B? Or maybe type in your response. What do you use? Well, when I started my coaching practice 10 years ago, I also used behavioral and cognition. I became very frustrated because I would get stuck and my clients would really not move. Yeah, a lot of people say both. What I'm really hoping that after this course, you'll be able to describe the benefits of using the emotional connection process, prepare engaging and experiential sessions for your clients, and really apply some of the strategies that we use in EmC for delivering and sustaining engagement. That is what really promotes learning for yourself and growth for your client. I'll share some basic science behind EmC, share with you some of the techniques that we use in emotional connection, where you and your client can feel totally satisfied. And I really say that now that we have a clear map on how to shape that. So what you can understand, you can definitely shape. What I hope is that you will see that change is relational. And when I say that, I'm thinking about some of the situations where I come in and the person says, I've been issued a personal improvement plan. And to take humans out of context of relationship, how they interact, what's happening with them in terms of the triggers, the responses, the cues that they get, is like taking a fish out of water and then saying, let's examine what's wrong with the fish. Well, awfully sorry, but the fact that you have taken out of the water distorts everything. So we need to understand who we are. We need to understand how we impact each other. And we need to know that when people work together, they impact each other both physiologically and emotionally. And the science of attachment helps us to understand that. I'm very passionate about attachment. I feel like it's the treasure that we've been all looking for. And not just for the fact that it helps us to work together, it helps us to get to the heart of the matter, fast. It helps us to understand that we are bonding mammals, bonding social mammals. And so I use attachment as my guide. And every time when I come to the session and people are struggling with whatever they're struggling with, I'm always focusing on what is happening, where is the attachment is broken, how can we identify that need for attachment and repair that attachment. If I'm thinking about the manager who's avoiding his direct reports, my question is, what is blocking him from being connected? Because that's the longing for connection we all have. that we need to know that we are bonding social mammals. And there's lots of good research that's showing that when we are connected, you are stronger as a person. You are much more resilient to stress. You are less likely to get anxious and depressed. You learn faster. You pay more attention to the topics and able to focus and engage. You're much more healthier human being. So my sense that this is amazingly significant. And I'm already amazed of the impact the EmC has on teams, on individuals and boards. And the transformation that is happening is truly, truly amazing. So I hope that the EmC flowers and grows and becomes an alternative to the fast coping techniques that people use. EmC helps you to be, it's a way of being with people, and it has enormous implications for all of us. Neuroscience, what we learn from neuroscience is that when we look at the brain function, the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for thinking, planning, and the decision-making process has no direct connection to the emotional region of the brain, the amygdala. However, the emotional region has massive connection to all of the brain functions, including the prefrontal cortex. What this means is that although it is very hard for us to control our emotions, it is very easy for our emotions to control our thoughts. And so when the disconnection happens, the emotional region basically hijacks the brain and does not allow you to access your communication skills, your negotiation skills, and really use your skills. So I want you to really understand how powerful emotion is, that emotion is the most powerful thing in the room. It is also the most powerful agent of change. Disconnections are bad for our brain. Our cognition slows down, our social skills diminish. It becomes very difficult for us to empathize with other person when we get disconnected. We cannot really understand their concerns or pain. We can't really hear what they're saying to us. It's hard for us to engage and collaborate when we are disconnected. And so when you use the EmC approach to reconnect people, that creates a healing arena. That creates an arena for change that is happening. So we're starting to understand that emotional connection is not just a sentimental illusion. It's something that we can shape to create positive dynamics. It helps the client to remove from isolation and not to be alone. And that's what we are. The coaches are to help them to take the clients through that transition. The way we help people to regain their emotional balance is through the reconnection process, where they feel that they are important, that they valued, that they matter, and that the other person cares. And I say feel because we are creating a new emotional experience where we're slowing things down, we are giving the language of articulating their emotion, and then we are able to create a new bonding conversation. So people come to the session all stressed, they can't look at each other. I see people like one person is sitting on this end of the table, the other person is sitting on the other end of the table. They can't look at each other. And by the end of the session, they're much more relieved. They feel like smiling. They feel sense of hope. I mean, I did a session yesterday, just like to read a few. I feel more connected. I feel more calm. I feel more optimistic and hopeful. And the other person says, I feel happy because I feel much more comfortable. I feel liberated, optimistic. The connection process is the key that you are looking for. That's the key of the attachment bond. We want to create the attachment for them. And so what we learn is EmC takes a whole new different theme. So it's about understanding that it's about understanding the attachment. It's about understanding that what matters is connection. What matters is emotional balance. Because when we are in emotional balance, the brain can function and can access all the functionalities. We regain the balance to know that we are important, that we matter, that we're valued, and that the other person cares. So you can really tune into people and use the emotional connection to help your clients to create that secure bond. To recap what we just talked about, EMC brings emotion front and center. Creating a new emotional experience is what will help you to reduce stress for your client. And change is relational. So I want to kind of like put my flag up and say, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, bonding science is your guide. So if you want your client to grow, EMC is an alternative to the fast coping techniques. EMC is about learning of who we are. It's about helping people in different ways, educating people, helping them not just to thrive, not just to cope, but really to experience a new emotional experience. And so in this session, in this particular section, I'll go over the engaging, how you can engage with your client. I structure your sessions to create a new emotional experience for them, staying with the process, and have a balanced session. Okay. So just a quick poll again. Who are your clients? Are they individuals or both? So for most people, individuals, and both. Great, thank you. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Andy and Laura, both. So your goal is engagement. Engagement during the session is the key. And, you know, I love Susan Johnson's analogy. She says she's the co-developer of emotionally focused therapy for couples and family. She's written great books, Hold Me Tight and Love Sense. So she says this: interaction is a dance. Emotion is the music. To change the dance, you have to change the music. You can't teach people to dance tango if their swing dancing is playing, right? The key is to get people engaged in their emotional experience so they can talk about it. When we get disconnected, people have all kinds of emotions that takes them over. Their daily work then becomes more about regulating their anxiety or managing their anger, or seek escape from the emotions altogether. They numb out, they shut down, right? I mean, you all have been experienced that yourself. The thing is, when we shut down, some of the things that people don't recognize is that when we shut down, we shut people out. And not only that, that when we shut down, we shut our positive emotions with the negative emotions. We don't get to choose, to make a deal with the universe and say, okay, I'm just going to shut out negative emotions. No, it doesn't work like that. So we have to be able to recognize that and help the clients to go through that experience so they can articulate what is happening for them, be able to be clear, because emotions are fast, and they're supposed to be fast because they're supposed to save our life. So and then when we don't know what is happening for us, we can go into anger very quickly. And I'm thinking about Sam, who would become very angry in his meetings. And at first, Sam would reject the idea of even having emotions. You know, he would say to me, men don't have emotions. But after a while, after I worked with him and we kind of like worked with the team, he was able to tune into his emotions and articulate. And so one time we were like sitting in the team session and somebody does something and suddenly, boom, his face changes. He becomes so angry. And I say, Sam, what is happening with you right now? And he says, I feel angry. And then 30 seconds later, he said, I feel better. So by just helping the clients to expand their emotional experience, expand their language of attunement, of how they be more clear what is happening with them, it can be much more manageable. You know, what is shareable is bearable. We want to be able to express this and take them through that experience. Some of the examples where you can engage your client is always to thank them for being in the session. This is very important because sometimes people feel very uncomfortable. They already feel stressed coming to the session. They feel anxious. They feel worried. They don't want to appear like the incompetent. And so thanking them for being there, you know, having the honor to work with them provides them a sense of validation, provides them a sense of you appreciating, you recognizing how difficult it is for them to be there at the session. The second thing is validation. You know, when they share with you what is happening for them, a great way to connect with them is validating, you know, that makes sense. And we'll go through those techniques. But as they share the story with them, what's happening with them, focus on the process. Try not to get stuck in content. Content gets us into the deep woods. If we're going to decide who is right, who is wrong, let me give you a suggestion how you should do that. That's content. What we want to focus is on the process. William Osler, who is one of the greatest physicians of all time, said, "A good doctor treats the problem. A great doctor treats the person with the problem." So when you are using the process, when you are helping the person to share their experience, your job is to create that safety for them, to create the safety for them to understand what is happening with you, what happened with you when this has occurred, when this person turned away. So I'm thinking about Tom. He's the CEO of a company, and in a meeting with his team, he gets frozen, he gets stuck. Dave, who's the CTO, expressing his opinion passionately, and he looks at Tom, and Tom can't look at him. So I don't really ask, like, what did he say? What did he mean? That's not important to me. What's important is I stay with the process. I say, Tom, what was happening for you in that moment? And he says, Lola, I just get frozen. When Dave starts yelling, I get so embarrassed. I don't know what to say. And then I stay with that. I get that. I get that it's very embarrassing for you. You get frozen, you don't know what to say. And then I can turn to Dave and say, Dave, what is happening for you? And Dave says, well, I don't know. I feel like Tom is not looking at me. I'm trying to express my opinion. I'm trying to share what's important to me. And Tom is just like ignoring me. And I'm feeling more, I'm kind of like moving more and more away from him. And I feel like I'm talking as I'm not being heard. I'm not being seen. And suddenly I start to feel all alone. And then I validate and I say, of course, it totally makes sense because Tom is so important to you. You feel all alone. So you take people through the process of first creating safety for them, then validating, focusing on the process. What is happening with them and what is happening between them? You don't get stuck in content and you focus on emotion, on creating a corrective emotional experience. The engagement should be happening, and we want to plan engagements often and early. So, you know, EMC is a collaborative process. We're not there to tell the client what they need to do and how they should be behaving themselves or what they need to fix. I never give suggestions, never. And at the same time, at the end of each session, people feel much more relaxed and happier and more satisfied. So you want to be able to help them to go through the experience early and often, asking them what is happening for them, what is happening even in the moment. Because if you think about it, one of your stressful moments, and you start talking about it, how quickly emotion comes up for you. And you can definitely feel exactly how you felt a week ago or a year ago or even 5 years ago. Our brain kind of holds on to these emotional experiences, and it helps us to bring that back and helps us to repair that in the session. So let's talk a little bit about how you can structure that emotional experience, how you can help people to go through from the disconnection and create that balanced session. Recognize that clients get stuck in their repetitive patterns One person blames, judges, criticizes, and the other person defends, distances, and stonewalls. So one person pushes for connection and the other person backs off. The more one backs off, the more the other pushes. And then they get stuck in this repetitive pattern of creating disconnection, and the interaction becomes unsafe. It becomes unsafe because safe, nurturing bond is not possible when people judge, criticize, defend, distance, stonewall. And this is one of the things that you need to know, that clients get stuck. And your job is to recognize, identify the cycle, identify the pattern that they get stuck in, and then help them to move out of that pattern. So you can restructure it, you can help them to recognize it, identify it, and then be able to step out of the negative pattern into the positive pattern. And you do that through these 5 techniques that we teach in the training. And these techniques are emotional responsiveness, validation, reflection, normalizing, and reframing. And as you go, and I gave some examples about it, as you go through the session, people share with you, these techniques help people to know that it's okay to feel this way. We all humans, it's okay to feel this way. Of course they feel this way because these people who they work with are very important to them. They depend on each other, and their brain needs to know that they feel valued, they feel important, they feel matter, and that they cared about, that they're not alone. In the moment of disconnection, sometimes overall people feel that way. They feel valued overall, but in that sliver moment, when Tom turns away and Dave feels alone, that sliver moment, he doesn't feel connected. And that's the disconnect that keeps coming back, and creates that emotional anger, emotional response in the meetings. So what we do is when we take the people through the emotional experience, we need to be able to stay with them in their vulnerability. We need to know how scary it is for people to be vulnerable. And so when you're able to do that, you help them to create safety for them. There's a great video of Brene Brown of sharing difference between empathy and sympathy. And so she says, in order to connect to that feeling, to that person's feeling, we need to be able to connect to that feeling in ourselves. And so one of the ways to do that is to be ARE, accessible, responsive, and engaged. So how ARE are you will depend on how comfortable you feel by using these techniques. So let's go through through ARE. The key bonding question in secure attachment is, are you there for me? A, are you accessible to me? Are you able to feel comfortable with me sharing my emotions? Are you able to help me to make them granular and specific? Lisa Feldman Barrett, who came up with this term, granularity, she said that the greater your granularity, the more precisely you can experience yourself and your world. So when I'm in session, I'm accessible because I have the language of emotions. And not only that, I give the list of emotions to my clients because they don't have the language yet. So you need to be able to help them, and when they share it, you need to be able to stay with them. So if the person is saying, I feel tense and I feel alone, I feel worried and I feel overwhelmed, I feel pressured, I feel scared, you need to be able to stay with that and say, wow, let me understand what is happening for you. Let me get the picture, how it feels for you. And you need to be able to look at people's eyes, to be comfortable with that, and stay with them with that. The second thing is responsiveness. Responsiveness, are you responsive to them? Can you cope with them, with these difficult, overwhelming emotions with them? When the person is telling me how they feel, they're giving me their surface emotions. I ask them for the softer emotions, the primary emotions. I ask them for the trigger. You know, we try to identify, is that the words they said that got them triggered? Is that the tone of voice? Is it the facial expression? What happened for them? What was the trigger? I help them to identify the raw spots. We all have raw spots. And to be able to know what your raw spots, you'll be able to be more accessible, responsive, and engaged. An emotional wave is coming at you. We ask them to paint the picture, to paint an image, because that's, again, we're going to more granular and specific. And we're able to, you know, to understand and help them. You know, are they falling through space? Are they feeling all alone in the boat? Are they feeling like they're in the desert? So you have to be able to be comfortable with that, to go slow and use all those techniques. And engaged. That is helping you to be more engaged. The engagement happens for you to create, to take them through the process, and then you help them to create a bonding conversation. Now, if you're working with an individual, for example, you can have the bonding conversation and you can practice with your client bonding conversation when the other person is not there. The fastest way people change is when with other people. So my preference is always you work with one person, you work with the other person, and then you bring people together. So when Tom turns to Dave, he says, I do shut down. I do turn away. I just don't know what to say at that moment. I don't understand what's happening. I didn't really know how alone you felt, but I get that now. I too feel alone. I lose you in our communication. I want to engage, but when I hear attacks coming at me, at my team, I just shut down. I want to hear what you have to say, and I also want to understand. I also want you to understand that sometimes I just don't know what to say. I want to be able to tell you that I don't know how to respond. See, that is an example of re-engaging openly and responsively. We change the emotional music that is playing, that is controlling their interaction, and now the interaction channel becomes open and engaging. So instead of Dave saying, why don't you? Dave says, I get scared when you shut me out. I end up feeling like I don't matter. I'm not valued on this team. I push and I try to make you respond to me because there's a part of me that is not sure that you're going to be there for me. I get scared. I yell and I scream and I push. And I'm so afraid that if I'm open like that, you're just going to turn away from me and shut me out. So now this is a different type of a conversation where you create these bonding moments with the new message that you are important, you do value, you are valued, you matter. So when we get to the place where I say, Tom, what do you need to feel safe and connected? What can Dave do right now at this moment? Tom says, I just need to hear that he knows that it's difficult for me. And Dave says, Tom, I hear that it's difficult for you. And then I turn to Dave and I say, Dave, what do you need to feel safe and connected with Tom? And Dave says, I need to know that I'm valued. And Tom can respond and say, Dave, you are valued. That is emotional bonding moment. And you can feel the emotions happening in the room. And you can feel that people are much more relaxed and much more safe with each other. Emotional balance happens when you are able to create, to be ARE, to be accessible, responsive, and engaged, and help your clients to be ARE, to be accessible, responsive, to engage to each other. Because that is how they're going to create more secure bonds. That is how they're going to nurture their bonds. So you use imagery, we need other people. And in coaching sessions, the client needs a model, a role model. And you are the role model. You are so important to their safety and be able to be vulnerability And you learn through the process to how to use the cycle of interaction worksheet. The cycle of interaction worksheet, the reason why I created it is because when I was studying emotionally focused approach, and I studied with Susan Johnson, it was very difficult for me because I really didn't understand, you know, when do we develop, when do we find out the trigger? How do we get to the raw spot? What are the emotions? Because the client is difficult for the client to identify the emotions. And so it's kind of like you shooting in the dark. So I created the cycle of interaction worksheets to help, you know, to help coaches, to help leaders, to help people to get through the process so they have the language, they have the roadmap, and you can identify what prompted the disconnect, what were the raw spots, what are some of the emotions, what are the images, the fears, and then what do people do to get stuck in this negative pattern of interaction? What are some of the behaviors do they do that are so ineffective, like blaming, judging, maybe shutting down, defending? And the second side is to create positive interaction. I love Carl Rogers' phrase, and he said that I love discovering the order in the experience. And that is what the worksheet does. It helps you to create the order in your client's experience. Strength in the attachment terms is a knowing about your vulnerability, is knowing it. It's being able to tolerate vulnerability and deal with it in an effective way. Not about denying your vulnerability or hiding it away and doing things just to distract yourself. So learning how to do that, it frees you up. I cannot tell you how many people have told me, I feel relieved. That's the first thing when I ask, how do you feel right now? They say, I feel relieved. And that's what actually Tom said in his session. Tom said, I feel relieved, and Dave said, I feel much safer. So by learning how to do this, you help your people you help the brain to collaborate, create, innovate, perform, thrive, communicate. I mean, I can go on and on for days what happens to people once they feel more connected. It's like being in love. I mean, how many of you have been in love, right? Everybody have known what it feels like to be in love. And when you're in love, you can turn the mountains around. You can turn the world around. That's how you energized you feel. The same thing at work. When we feel connected, we can turn the world around. We can address the changes. Like yesterday, the person says, the dragon is no longer scary. The dragon that I'm facing in front of me, I have a person who is standing next to me, and it's no longer scary for me. When we have challenges, it's so much easier for us to deal with challenges when we have people who we depend on, who we seek attachment, who we seek bonding, are standing next to us. And so we repeat and do this over and over again in our sessions. We focus on the process, use the cycle of interaction. I use the cycle of interaction every single session. If I have more than 2 people in the room, like if I'm working with the team, I just take a piece of paper and I basically do the same thing. And usually in a team, the problem, the dynamics changes, the challenge happens between 2 people at a time. So you always can have a reconnection session either outside or right there with the team. And when I do a reconnection session with the team, the rest of the people are watching and learning. So that's okay to do it. You are focusing on creating a new emotional experiences. You use imagery, you go slow, and you repeat. Delivering your session. Let's talk about that. You want to deliver a facilitated, to lead and follow. And this is really important because you want to be able to trust the process. You trust the process, you use the techniques, you are helping your clients to grow and develop. When they are connected, you are creating an amazing arena for change. People change each other. They don't change in isolation. They can't grow in isolation. So you meet the client where they are, right? You meet them, you help them to identify. I mean, people sometimes are uncomfortable to talk about emotions. I remember working with one board where I would meet with the CEO, the chairman, and the vice chair. And I would ask them, how do you feel before the board meeting, at the board meeting, and then after the board meeting? And every time I would come to the vice chair, he would say, Lola, don't ask me about emotions. I'm a very private person and I don't like to talk about emotions. I said, no problem. So you meet the client where they are. But then what happened is they watch you, they experience it, and then they take a risk to do that. And so that happens with this particular board. After about eight sessions, we're coming after the board meeting, and I'm going around, asking how they feel. And suddenly the vice chair says, I feel demeaned. I feel not important. I feel like I was brushed to the side. And you watch like, wow, that's amazing. And at that moment, you sense this emotional charge that is happening. And the best thing that happened was the chairman turned and said, what can we do? And the vice chair said, just be there. And you see like bonding happens. And now people leave the meeting much more happier. They don't feel like they have not been heard. They feel like they shared, they feel like understood, and everything becomes so much easier to do. So emotional openness and responsiveness is what really creates trust, safety, and secure bonding. And John Bowlby is the father of attachment theory, so I just love what he says. Be yourself, be yourself in a session. Know that you are so important to your clients, so important. Your presence is important. Your ability to lead and follow them through the dense forest of, of emotions, of sorting things out. You are so, so important. You are giving them the amazing gift of creating that ability to experience. So be yourself, use your style to create an environment of engagement with your client. The EmC process is like dancing the Argentine tango. I love this analogy. Actually, Susan Johnson uses it a lot because she also dances Argentine tango, and I love dancing. So I used to dance Argentine tango with my husband, and I'm sorry that I'm using this in the corporate world, in the business world, but just get a sense that when the team is synchronized, is dancing together, they are in this emotional channel together, and that's what we need to understand. So if you know anything about the Argentine tango, it's not like a traditional tango. The Argentine tango is improvised. It's improvised, and the first you learn the steps, and then you kind of you listen to the music, and then you throw away the steps and you tune into each other, and you just flow. You just go with the flow, and that's what emotional connection is all about. It's tuning into yourself, tuning into your people who you work with, tuning into your client, and then dancing this, creating this flow, dancing this dance. What determines great partners from amateur is that emotional attunement. Argentine tango is PhD in attunement. That's not me, by the way. It's, it would be great if it would be me. But it's the ability to tune into your emotions, to be tuned into your people who you work with, and improvise this dance of beautiful music. And with EmC, you learn the steps, you learn the map, you use attachment as a map, and then you create that amazing emotional experience. So as a summary, EmC is an alternative to fast coping techniques. EmC is a new language. It's a new dance. To use it, you need to learn how to be ARE, accessible, responsive, and engaged. Trust the process, and it will take you through places where you have never experienced before. At the end of each session, I ask my clients, ask your clients, I ask 4 questions. How would you rate on the scale of 1 to 10, based on the session that we have, how would you rate being heard today? And how would you rate the topics and goals that were covered today from 1 to 10? how would you rate the effectiveness of the EMC approach today? And how would you rate the overall session today? I want to share with you. So I have completed now, yesterday was 214th session, so over 200 sessions. At the end of these sessions, when I ask, here are the responses. So being heard, out of 200 sessions, 99% say that they feel heard. 96% they feel like the goals and topics were covered. They are satisfied. And again, I don't talk to them about the content. I don't decide who's right, who's wrong. I don't give them suggestions. I only take them through the process of emotional connection. People say that 95% are satisfied with the EmC approach. The overall session, 96% are satisfied with the overall session. You know, I'm as a coach, I am as a professional, feel joy in my heart when I have these results. When people give me, yesterday, both people gave me 10 on being heard, goals and topics, EmC approach, and EmC session. Both people gave 10, 10, 10. And it's not Lola. I want you to know it's not the Lola, it's the process. You can learn this process and can become so much more effective. Your life is going to change. My life has changed. Not only with my clients, my personal life has changed, and people tell me that. Their personal lives have changed. So I invite you to learn the EmC process and be familiar with this language. Thank you. So I think we have a few more minutes for some questions. If you would like to maybe send you some questions about the process or about what we have covered, or tell me what's the one thing that you learned today. Oh, yes, you can get a copy of the worksheet. You can download the copy of the worksheet on the website, level5executive.com, and you can download it for free, this worksheet. It's a great worksheet. And by the way, when you expand that, when you learn the EmC process, you can expand your practice. You can expand your practice of work with boards, work with teams, do presentations, do a keynote. You can join our membership and grow. You can join actually for free and watch the webinars that I have given in the past and learn the process. Yeah, and send me any information. Do you need a background in psychology? No, you do not need a background in psychology. Best thing about this is that I have kind of like simplified this process and simplified the training in so many ways that you don't need to learn, you don't need to know psychology to do that. And again, we are helping people to take them through their own process so they can articulate, they can understand what's happening, and they can feel valued, important, matter, and the other person cares. They can know that the other person cares. Because when we feel disconnected, we lose that sense. We forget, we get wrong cues. Our messages get scrambled. And so we lose each other. So, okay. So one of the other questions that I get a lot, is there a difference between men and women in terms of emotions? And I have to tell you that I thought so before, but through my experience, I have seen that there's really no difference between men and women. Because on the human level, if you strip down the sex, right, we all humans, we are bonding social mammals. We want to be bonded. Our brain works best when we bond. So there's no difference. Men want to express emotion just as much as women do. Women have a little more practice. And so I think like sometimes women are afraid to express their emotions or afraid to go there because of feeling like they have to be tough and strong. But in the opposite, they're actually doing disservice to themselves if they don't feel relaxed and don't feel okay to express and say, you know, I feel confused, or I feel stressed. You know, I feel like you feel angry. And you know what? It's okay to feel angry. Or I feel stressed. I feel scared. That's okay to say, and be able to help the other person to say that too. So we kind of like regulate each other's physiology. We regulate each other's emotional responsiveness. Okay. So you can feel free to send me an email, to go on the website. There's lots of videos. Watch the testimonials. It was so fun to do this webinar.
It was great, Lola. Thank you so much. I love the tango reference because that was had me cracking up because I'm not a dancer, but I love the thought of learning the steps and then totally intuitive after that and totally improvising and stuff. And we did have another question pop up from Sherry. It was in the Q&A. Question is, what is your best way to connect with someone who continues to blame others? For an example, they are filled with emotional anger, but only voice what others have done to make them feel that way.
You need to be able to recognize that when people are blaming, criticizing, judging each other, they are pushing for connection. There's a great video on YouTube. It's called Still Face. In Still Face experiment, electronics from Harvard, a mother and a baby in interaction, and the baby and the mother is like interacting with each other. They're playing, they are responding to each other, and then they ask the mother to go still and silent, still face. And then you watch this baby and what happens to the baby. And what they have found is that adults go through the same sequence of events of trying to get them the attention, the connection back as the baby. So the baby pushes, reaches first, then the baby pushes for connection, then the baby shuts down. So when people go into blame, you know that they're struggling inside. They're crying out for help. They're crying to feel valued, important, matter, and that the other person cares. Because they have lost that connection. They have lost that ability to know that that's what they are with this person. When we have a more secure bond and people say something to us, we don't respond to that as much because we have established that connection. However, when people blame, this is your signal. They are pushing for connection. And you need to be, excuse me, you need to be able to slow it down, to be able to understand. I hear you, that's very difficult for you. I hear you, what is happening for you? To be able to try to understand, to be able to put the words into their pushing, into that blame. Behind the blame, there's pain. And so that's what we're trying to get to.
That was excellent. That's such a common question. And what a great example with the baby. Okay, Sherry says, okay, thanks. Thank you, Sherry, for that question. That was fantastic. Especially people who are coaching teams, because on the outside looking in, we can see that dynamic, we can see what's happening, but often that person who's blaming doesn't realize that. And so that's really a nice, just compassionate, way to look at it. So that was
sure. And those 5 techniques help a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
In a 2-day training, what we do is we really dive in more into this science of emotional connection, into attachment. We dive into the techniques. We practice a lot. And we dive into using the cycle of interaction. And the 3rd day is train the trainer, where you learn how to present the information. You do more of the role playing. We sometimes bring outside people so you can actually do a session that's very interesting. And then you get all the materials that I have for you to teach this to other people.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so again, Dr. Lola, thank you so much for being here. Yes, that was fantastic. For those of you in Orange County, we have our chapter meeting June 27th this month, and also in July we'll have another one, of course, and then we'll see Dr. Lola again in August. What a great topic. Love hearing about emotions in the workplace because that's one I'm passionate about as well. So nice to see that come up. And thanks to all of you for sharing your time with us today. And again, thank you, Dr. Lola, for having your time and teaching us about this very engaging topic.
Thank you, Karen. Thank
you.
You're
welcome. And a lot of good thank yous coming up in the chat. So you're welcome, everybody. Have a great week. And again, you can catch this on YouTube. You will also be getting a survey so you can suggest other topics that you'd like to talk about. And thank you, Sherry. Great session. Yes, I really think it was. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.